Let's bring in Peter Emerson, a Huffington Post contributor who's worked for 3 Democratic administrations, and Dr. Gina Loudon, host of America Trends with Dr. Gina. Good afternoon to both of you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Gina, how do you respond to what we just heard from Senator Graham? In your opinion, is that an accurate comparison to make?
I do think that was, it's not often that Senator Graham and I agree, but I do feel like that was a very appropriate response. I think that the president saw what happened to those children, and evidently the things that we had heard from the Obama administration about Assad not having chemical weapons isn't true, and the president acted swiftly, and I think it was a good thing.
I mean, Eugenia, you're a Trump supporter, and Lindsey Graham's been a vocal Trump critic for some time. How do you explain this turnaround? Because, you know, we've had guests already on today and earlier this morning who have told me, listen, these atrocities have been happening. Why now?
Right. Well, I'm glad that the president is, keeping his finger on the pulse rather than, locking into some foothold from years past. You have to look at the fact that we believed Obama and Kerry when they told us that Assad no longer had chemical weapons. Apparently, that wasn't true. And so with that new information, the president made a decision. And I think most of America appreciates that he was able to act, as I said, swiftly, and to send a message to Assad that this sort of human atrocity, especially exacted on children, will not be tolerated by the rest of the world.
So you're not part of the group who says, listen, no intervention, America first. There's a section of folks that are frustrated and mad with his decision.
Yeah, I think it's a small section. I agree that I don't want to go, before this, I thought, I really hope we don't intervene that way. I hope we can find a different way. But having seen knowing this, President Trump is acting on Obama's intelligence, on the intelligence of the Obama administration, because confirmations have taken so long that that's really what he has to go on. So we have to assume that he has information that we don't have and that he acted on it. And I, for one, am just glad to see his level of decisiveness and his ability to be sort of fluid in these situations and make decisions, not worried about what the media is going to say to attack him, but instead just doing the right thing in that moment.
Let me bring you in here, Peter, from a Democrat's perspective. I mean, what do you think? And is President Trump a kind of Reagan 2.0?
I don't think so. I have great empathy for impulse, emotional impulse in reaction to the photographs that the president saw. But my concern is that impulse bombing without a follow-up strategy could be very dangerous. We saw what happened in Libya, for instance. So I think the questions we really need to ask are, what were the effects of the bombing? Right now, the reports out of Syria indicate there was very little damage done to the airfield. It's not going to inhibit, in fact, it's not inhibited the Assad regime's bombing of those camps at all.
Right.
And then second, what's the long-term strategy? Is this a one-off? Are we looking for regime change? The danger with that is the two major rebel groups are ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We could end up in a very, very difficult situation there if we don't think through. On the other hand, I understand the impulse to want to do something with these horrific pictures, but there's nothing that's coming out of Syria that's being reported by all parts of the world that indicates that anything has been effective vis-a-vis this bombing.
Peter, do you think Democrats acted the right way in response?
Well, I don't think it was unanimous, because Democrats don't usually react monolithically, much to my frustration often. But I think the idea that chemical weapons that we've been trying to get off the surface of the earth since World War I, anything we can do to foster that is a good thing. The problem is this didn't really have anything to do with chemical weapons other than the pictures that were produced by the chemical weapons, but attacking the airfield didn't do anything to destroy the supplies or the warehouses filled with these chemicals.
All right, we'll just have to see what happens next. Let me squeeze in another topic here. Politico's reporting this morning that the president actually ordered Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner to sit down and work things out earlier this week after so many reports of discord between the two top advisors. Gina, what's your take on this dynamic when it comes to the infighting, particularly knowing the president's leadership style?
Yeah, well, you know, contrary to what Peter said, I really am glad that there is a disagreement. You have strong voices in this White House. You have strong personalities, strong opinions. I think that's a good thing, and I think it even is a stronger testament to this president that rather than strong arm these strong personalities, he says, hey, you know, sit down, work it out. That is the way it's done. And we all know that the president doesn't hesitate to tell someone they're fired if they're acting out of line. But that's not the case here. There are going to be different leadership styles. There are going to be different opinions. And it's interesting that on the conservative side, it seems to me like differences of opinion are often respected. You know, in the Republican Party, you have pro-choice, you have pro-life, you have pro-traditional marriage, you have pro-traditional or pro-gay marriage. It's a big tent.
Yeah.
And I think the White House is reflective of that big tent.
Peter, where's the balance there? You've worked inside of the White House between exactly what Gina is saying, listen, you know, different opinions coming to the table, and then to the extreme to where you're stalling the agenda because you can't get anything done. Is there a tap dance there, or where's the line?
The tap dance generally is done internally. This tap dance between Bannon and Jared Kushner and many, many others, I mean, they're just sort of the leader of their own tribes, so to speak. This is being danced out around the world in publications, on the news. We're talking about it. This is not good. It's confusing to our allies. It doesn't make for any sort of semblance of a strategy, whether it be strategic or tactical. And so ultimately, the style that corporate CEOs use in the boardrooms of their companies often don't work in government. That's yet to be seen. But at the moment, sitting down and working it out is one thing. The problem is, are they going to keep it inside the White House? To this date, it's been very clear that neither of them, actually no one in the White House, is able to keep it inside the White House itself. It's now on the front pages of every newspaper, of every television program around the world.
If they can't keep it inside, do you think a shakeup is coming?
I think either way, there seems to be a shakeup coming.
Gina, what do you think?
I think you have to look at this week, one of the most successful weeks of a presidency ever. The president, of course, met with the leader of China. He had a very successful airstrike where the airport was decimated, as were many of their airlines. I'm not sure where Peter's getting his information, but that's the data that I saw.
If I may. Gina, if I may, the visual reports from on the ground from Syrian television show that there was very little damage even to the runways.
I hear you. You also had the confirmation of the entire change of the Supreme Court this week with the confirmation of Gorsuch. You have in his first 100 days literally record numbers of jobs set. The stock market soaring.
Gina, I have to.
Actually, the jobs just went down. The jobs report was just
released. We're going to do the job reports coming up.
Fewer this month.
Peter, let me give you the last word. I hear what Gina's saying. We're going to get to that. But the matter at hand, what's next for Syria? Let me give you the last word. I've got about 7 seconds.
Well, there's a confusion because Nikki Haley said last week that Syria was not a priority. Tillerson, Secretary of State, said it's in the people's decision of Syria to do what they want. I don't see any strategy that's been laid out, and that's what concerns me.
Peter Emerson, Gina Loudon, thank you for your time on this Saturday. So ahead, President Trump's waning popularity.